we start with the 4 quadrants, what we already did, and then we have 4 modules or 4 2-hour sessions where we explore the 8 stages of consciousness development. And we use Ken Wilber's metaphor of the what he calls ladder climber view, what you see here on the left, that when we are born, the rungs of the ladder are not there, just the sides of the ladder. And as we mature, we build these rungs, and usually we don't build them completely, right? Everybody has some holes in their development. And these holes then often show up as projections in our relationships at their particular level, and also as shadow where we may get triggered. So we take a very relational approach to these stages of consciousness development. And so we cover the first 3 in the first module, the next 2 in the next module, then 1 for the 6th level, and then 2 for the 2nd tier levels. And the idea around this is that couples who are not at the same level of consciousness development, when it comes to communication, where we have 3 modules for communication, they often have a problem to find agreement or solve their conflicts if they're at different levels. And that's because, when we communicate, we usually communicate things around objects, facts, thoughts, feelings, needs. Right? There's many other things we communicate. And so that this is sort of like a objective or subjective or intersubjective or interobjective reality that the speaker in the bottom left expresses, and it gets filtered through his or her level of consciousness development. And also the validity claims that people make from a feminine or masculine perspective. So this is called Buehler's organon of communication, but I filled in the center. Carl Buehler didn't do that. And then here is the hearer on the other side who tries to understand what the hell this person is talking about, what's at the top. So once we look at this a little bit more deeply, you wonder why we understand each other at all, right? I mean, this is such a complicated process once you think about. And so we have 3 modules on need-based communication, 1 compassionate communication, and 1 being-based or becoming-based communication, I call that. So need-based for the first 5 levels, then the compassionate communication or nonviolent communication, 6, and then the being and becoming communication at level 7 and 8. Then we have a module where we separate the males and the females into 2 groups. They get the same questions, and 1 man and 1 woman is keeping notes. Then we come all back together in the big room, and the person who took the notes reports the answer to the group or to the other sex. And this is just like fascinating, right? What kind of answers men and women go, where the women often go, really, you guys all think that way, right? Or the men go, I never knew that women think that way. So maybe you remember Deborah and Laura, when we did that exercise, a lot of comes up. That leads us to the next module of the fear-shame downward spiral, from a book called How to Fix Your Marriage Without Talking About It, by talking with your partner in a different way. So it's a misleading title. You still have to talk. And we first find out what is the fear and the shame in females. Then I describe the fear-shame downward spiral, and then we have a beautiful healing exercise, how you can work yourself back up with your partner to love and romance. Then we have 1 module, which is kind of not enough, but 1 module for feminine masculine polarities, ascending, descending, agency, and communion. I'm just fascinated how rich this module became and went way beyond the feminine masculine, the romantic couple. Then we have a module for spiritual development where I guide you through a meditation where you experience the gross, the subtle, the causal, and the pure witness level. And this is called the Wilber-Combs lattice. So we will then see how these different experiences towards more and more presence and surrender and emptiness, if you will, are integrated with the exterior structure stages or stages of healthy ego development. And so I'm not going to go into details right now. So that's one module. And then if you look at the top of the screen, when I switch, it switches to sexuality. So I created a Wilbur-Combs lattice for sexuality, which nobody else has done, I think, which goes from repressed sexuality to fucking, to having sex, to making love, to sacred sexuality. And we have a very touchy, in the best sense, exercise there, where I also guide you through a meditation, and then we do some eye gazing and then some gentle touching, and then we have a conversation about our sexuality. So that's a very juicy module. Then we explore the 5 stages of anima and animus complex. For those who don't know that's a Jungian concept, where Jung conceived that boys and girls are born to a mother, and girls then, see males at one point as strange other subjects and objects, and little boys see women, realize that they're not like mother but like father, and they split off male. The man split off female and feminine aspects into their unconscious, or off from their soul, as Carl Jung would have said, and women split off male masculine aspects, and they then get projected on the opposite sex when we're adults to different to different degrees. And so there's 5 stages for each sex that are obviously different of this complex that we will explore. Then we will explore the 5 love languages, and that seems to be a light-hearted object, almost a little bit superficial, but last time we went into the shadow elements of the 5 love languages. It was really, really exciting and very surprising to me what came up when we explored a little deeper, how, why do we have these love languages, and what is authentic, what is conditioned, what is repressed, things like that. Then we have a module on the Enneagram types, the 9 types of the Enneagram, also with compatibility between certain types and incompatibilities. Then that's not a separate module, but here you see how we bring everything together with the levels of consciousness development, feminine, masculine polarities, how they shift as we evolve in consciousness, and then the 5 stages of spiritual sexual development and anima animus complex development, and the personality types. And then this is the cosmic address, where we add the 4 quadrants to the cosmic address. And this is what shows up when you get into a relationship, right? Even if you're not conscious or aware of all these different dimensions by that time in the training, you go like, oh, whoa, there's a lot of subtlety that shows up when we get in a relationship, not only the 4 dimensions, but also all these different developmental potentials that we have. Then we go to the attachment styles, which is such a fascinating and still emerging topic, which impacts so many areas of our life, which John Bowlby started to develop in the 50s, and then Ian Ainsworth and others took it from there. And now we have, even in modern, Daniel Siegel and other people who put a lot of research into these attachment styles. And so we just scratched the surface a little bit from secure, avoidant, anxious, attached, and anxious avoidant or disorganized attachment. Then we have 2 modules on shadow, and we use a book that Aftab maybe knows, is Undefended Love by Chet Sarsis and Marlena Lyons, who were or are probably still students of A.H. Almas, the Ritwan school, the diamond approach. And so we approach it from this, what they describe in Undefended Love, that when we have a primary emotional reaction to our partner's reality, it's like protecting, it's like a protective suit that we wear that protects the underlying vulnerable feeling, which then in turn protects our deepest fear of being emotionally naked or to relive some very vulnerable childhood trauma. So we have one module where we just practice these first two levels, and then the next one where we go all the way. And then in that second module, we also have a beautiful healing exercise with affirmations and more information about your false identity or broken toe, as the undefended love authors call it. And it's usually 21 different false identities that people land in, which is also pretty interesting. So most people call this the most magical exercise of the training, because it's so quick to get to a shadow, where even seasoned therapists had said, wow, you know, it took me 6 months or a year to get to some deep false identity or wound, and we did it here in 20 minutes. It's really, really amazing. This is not trauma therapy, right? This is not disorder, psychiatric disease. These are just day-to-day or week-to-week emotional reactions to our partner's reality, and we become more loving and more intimate and more free if we learn how to do this process with our partner. Then we have a module on personality disorders, briefly because in myself, I'm a recovering person who pathologically got attracted to people with personality disorder. And I see that a lot in the integral community, or in the community of people who are empaths and helpers and enjoy complexity in other people. And people with personality disorders are often very fascinating, interesting people. And we like the challenge of being in relationship with them. And they're usually very educated around spirituality, psychology, growth, because their whole life they try to figure out why they are normal and everybody else is crazy, right? So that's the typical sign of a person with a personality disorder, that they don't think anything is wrong with them, like Donald Trump, right? He thinks everybody else who's not with him is crazy. And so we also look at 22 stages of decline that relationships go through if you happen to have been or still are with someone with a personality disorder, and how to have healthy boundaries, right? To look at yourself, what attracts you to these people. So I recovered, I'm healed now, but I'm still attracted, but I'm like a recovering alcoholic who hasn't went to the bottle for a few years, right? So I'm still longing, but I'm no longer touching. Literally speaking, no longer touching. Then we explore 8 forms of love based on Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love. And we dive a little deeper into the unconscious here again, with 6 levels of dependence that lead to commitment, from codependence to dependence to independence to interdependence to interbeing to interbecoming. So it is also quite a rich module of the forms of love. Then we dive into the new book, the purpose part. And what I think is unique to my teaching on purpose is that I teach 3 types of purpose. One is our biological purpose that we all have, right? To eat, survive, reproduce, and quality of life. There are a few more aspects to it. And I like this cartoon, right? That every animal, every living being does that. And then here are we humans, and we go like, what is life about? I don't know what my life is about. Well, duh, right? Just you got a neocortex a few 100,000 years ago doesn't mean that all this other stuff dropped away. It's still in our reptilian and in our limbic brain system. But then we go, and then we look at how this leads to what I call transactional love relationship, asymmetrical transactional love relationships along the 7 chakras. So that's also something that I think nobody else has done before. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. And I use Hegel and Marx, like the dialectical system between the 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th chakra exchange, right? And when this dialectic breaks down, then one of the partners becomes the master and the other becomes the slave. So we don't have enough time that I go into details, but I'm very proud of this insight. And then we talk about our, what I call transcendental purpose or soul's or higher purpose, which interestingly enough is genetically predispositioned. All of you have a different level of genetic predisposition for either empathy, kinesthetic abilities, intelligence, cognitive intelligence, or creativity. And through your physical and brain development, and then skill development, nature and nurture and skill development, you know, your brain, your body, your mind develops either in a conducive way that you can express these talents and experience that as living your purpose or not. So we have an exercise how you can identify your transcendental purpose. And then when you share your transcendental purpose by doing what you love to do, what you do well, what the world pays for, and what the world needs, that allows you to shift your love relationships from these transactional relationships to transcendental love relationships. So this is our capacity to love, right? Before we looked at 8 forms of love, and this is our capacity to love, which is different, right? That's one. We need different skills for these kind of love relationships than for these love relationships. And I forgot to put in a slide here. There is also a chakra consciousness matrix. And that leads us then to the final image of the training, which has the shared purpose as the guiding principle, right? What is the purpose of your relationship? Biological purpose, growth purpose, to heal, learn, grow, awaken, or to live share a transcendental purpose to make the world a better place. Then that's held together by intimacy. We just had an exercise for intimacy, passion, and commitment, which creates the safe container for the relationship. So you can co-create at a level of the 7 chakras as equal and opposite partners. So there's still feminine, masculine polarities in all 4 quadrants. And then you see the little lines in there with the developmental levels in each of the quadrants. So you want to be with a partner who is at similar developmental levels as you are on each of the quadrants. So that's, we have a video where everybody talks about the complexity of the model, right? And it's very complex, but we have 26 weeks to arrive just from the quadrants, what we did tonight, to understanding all these dimensions of our being and relating. And it's arguably probably the most complex relationship model that's out there. So it's not for everyone, but for those who get it, it's very exciting.